I don't think that brand is too much of an investment. It's actually, I think, it's like one of these foundational things that helps you make more with less.
I'm Jonathan Gandalf, and welcome to the Content Cocktail Hour, powered by The Juice. Our mission is to squeeze out the deepest secrets of B2B marketing professionals to help you push your brand to the forefront of the industry. Let's raise the glass. Welcome back to the Content Cocktail Hour. This is Jonathan, your host of today's episode, founder and CEO of The Juice. I'm excited, I'm thrilled, I should say, to be joined by Kae from Superside. She's the executive creative director there. We are big fans of Superside. We had Jen from the Superside team on the podcast last year. It was a really fascinating conversation. I think Superside's somebody who we respect a ton for what they do from their own brand perspective and how they help other businesses up-level and improve and act on their brand. So I'm really excited to dig into this conversation. But why don't I stop rambling there? And Kae, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role in your own words?
Hi, Jonathan. And yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited as well. We're also fans of The Juice, and I feel like honored to represent creative for once, more creative presence in the marketing world. I am, as you said, an executive creative director, but I like to say that I'm a designer. A lot of my friends make fun of me when I introduce myself. I say, I'm just a designer. Designer's designer. Background in branding and creative. I worked for at least like 7-8 years on the agency side, and then I switched to in-house. I live in Berlin, so I used to work in this big tech company in Berlin, did a lot of performance marketing, a lot of talks about KPIs and metrics and things like that. That was like a massive switch for me. And then I've been at Superside for the last 3 years now, I think. And I lead our marketing creative, our brand. So yeah, I'm really always passionate about anything that has to do with marketing, with tech, anything like that. And I feel like if anyone knows me or reads my posts on LinkedIn, I love to talk about how creative has a bigger seat at the table than we get a lot of times. So yeah, really happy to talk to you about this.
I'm so excited to dig into that topic. It feels like such a classic marketing debate or balance between creative versus like demand gen. We'll talk more about that. And I think myself, I have probably some notions or biases around the whole topic where maybe I'll learn a little bit today as well. So I'm excited for that. But this is the Content Cocktail Hour. Before we dig into all of that, Kae, we always ask all of our guests, what are you enjoying drinking nowadays?
I love a margarita. I think it's like the perfect blend of like a sweet, spicy, salty all in one. I also like to like spice it up with a mezcal or something. So yeah, that's my thing.
I too am a huge margarita fan. I'm actually more of like just a beer fan when I'm enjoying alcohol. But like if I'm going cocktail, I will drink margarita with Mexican food. I'll drink it with anything. I love it. That's always one of my favorite cocktails.
A good choice.
So, yes, exactly. Well, all right. So let's dig into that creative conversation. This feels like a really interesting time for creatives everywhere, for creative work. We've got kind of two forces happening at once that feel almost inverse of traditional creative work. And that is this rise of AI trying to make everything more efficient and as easy as a click of a button. And then we also have the macro markets causing every team and every business wanting to do more with less. And those both feel maybe like, again, like headwinds against traditional creative work. So how is all of this manifesting for creatives? What does it mean for creatives? How are you yourself kind of adjusting to all of this happening all at once?
I definitely think the world has changed quite a bit since I at least started working in creative. I think that the biggest challenges we have today, I think creative leaders as well, but in general marketing, is really that everybody's really overwhelmed and under-resourced, and we face pressures that I think we've never faced before. I think there is a lot of different maybe biases, but also problems that I think we all face. For example, there is this endless demand for more. I think marketing is unique in that because there is this sort of idea that there is this paradox that the more you create, if it works really well, then you have to create even more. You have to change your creative. Even if it's working, it might hit a plateau and then you need to start shifting it out, etc. So there's just generally this idea that you have to create more to be successful. There is also this misconception that creative work is really easy, right? So everybody thinks you can do it. And then on top of that, I think AI has further made this worse because now it seems like anybody can do it with AI, right? Like, why don't you just put something in ChatGPT or Midjourney, and your like little 13-year-old cousin can do it. And that's definitely made everything a bit more complicated. I obviously think everybody is aware across the globe and across the industries that their budgets are shrinking. We have this across the board, right? Creative leaders are expected to do the same or more amount of work with a smaller team. And there's just generally, there is this pressure that I think everybody can relate to, that everybody's telling you how to use AI, but nobody's telling you how. We do a lot of both events, webinars, and I talk a lot with other creative leaders and even just customers. And I feel almost reassured that everybody has the same problem, but at the same time, it is difficult to overnight integrate AI workflows in your brand because maybe you haven't built it for AI. So that all made it really challenging to be really creative, right? Like all of the things I just mentioned have nothing to do with design or being creative. It's just the way the world is.
Just kind of balancing all of that like mentally, like it creates a lot of like head trash, right? Of like, it's just a lot of noise. And I feel like sometimes like, creative work, sometimes noise can be a positive, but it feels like when you're balancing all of that kind of headspace, you almost have to compartmentalize that to really do the creative work. I'm curious, you mentioned a lot of things around AI there. I'd be interested in your own experience being a creative, a designer, as you introduce yourself as just a designer. How are you using or not using AI in your day-to-day?
I use a lot of AI. I have to say that no matter what the industry thinks, I'm a big early adopter of AI and I'm like a tech optimist. So I do use it a lot and I can talk about it the whole day. I find that I'm using it in 3 different ways. One is definitely workflows. So I guess a lot of people use it in this way as well, right? Like everything we do now is recorded and everything we record is summarized or translated into AI. That I find helps a lot, right? Like when's the last time you had to take notes on a call or have to remember something? Everything is already there. I feel like if someone would see me from outside, they would think I'm a surgeon or something. I go around with my ChatGPT app and I record myself talking and then just kind of translate this into notes, into directions, into whatever. I love it. And so that's a big one. I think it saves a lot of time. The second thing is obviously creative work, right? I love using Gen AI tools to create anything from like images to videos. Big fan of a lot of tools we're using at Superside, whether it's Midjourney, Korea, Visual Electric, a lot of different Runway I love for videos. So that's been a big game changer. I think that obviously you have to invest a lot of time to learn it and to get the results you want. So it's never just one thing. And that's something we can always talk about more of. But yeah, I feel like there's this bias or misconception that like you just put something in and then you get the results you want. Not true, right? Then I think the last thing, we are also trying to think of AI as more than just an assistant. It's really just an ecosystem of tools. And I, being like a branding person, a branding expert, also love thinking about like an AI first brand. What does it look like? Right now, we are basically taking brands that haven't been creative with AI in mind and trying to fit them into this box that doesn't really fit. Now I think we're there to start thinking of brands with AI first and then expand them, which I think is really exciting.
I love that you're both creative and an early adopter of AI. Feels like there's been this like fight, like creatives and AI have been adversaries previously. So I'm curious, what would you say to a creative or a designer who maybe hasn't yet adopted AI or almost views AI as like an enemy of their own work? What would you say to them to kind of get them maybe on the other side of that fence to start to adopt AI?
Before even answering that, I think there are 2 elephants in the room we can address, which is like why creatives are not excited about it yet. One is that it does feel like something that takes away from the creative process, right? Like if you love creative work, you love the process. And if you make this into like a 3-second tech situation, it's not exciting anymore. That's not true, as I said, and I'm happy to walk through my process, but it's not really that way. I think you still need a lot of creative experience and knowledge and eye to actually create something really cool with AI. So it's really like any other tool in that way. It's really not taking away from the process, it's just complementing it. And the second thing is obviously data privacy and copyright. I think that we have invested a lot of time at Superside in getting this right from the get-go, making sure we are actually putting like the human first. Everything we do is based on that work, and then AI just amplifying what we've done. It's not about kind of stealing anything that's been done before. And that's, I think, something really important. I'm being a creator, being an illustrator, I also feel really passionate about that like uniqueness of individual creative work. So it's really important for us to preserve that. And that's why I think AI sometimes gets a bad rep. But having said that, I think what is really exciting about it is that you really get to do things that you haven't, like, these are the things that you can't really do by yourself. There are ways that you can expand what you're already doing that weren't possible before, right? Like, it's like any other tool, like from a pencil to a computer and from a Illustrator to Figma and from Figma to whatever other tools there are. I think if we are stuck in the old, we're never going to innovate. And that's something that I feel like you just need to be open-minded to get. And I do think a lot of creatives are early adopters and open-minded. Yeah. I think they're just afraid.
That's great perspective. I love that, like just comparing it to other technology advancements, right? Like this is just the next thing, right? And again, like we'd say it's crazy if somebody was still only using pencil and paper as opposed to computers, right? Like it's just like, I think with time, hopefully it does become widely adopted in all the right ways while addressing and being aware of the elephants in the room. It's really great perspective. You mentioned earlier about this like flip in perspective of AI first brands. I know Superside, you all are investing heavily in your own brand and also helping other businesses invest in their brand. In this era of do more with less, you being a creative, you mentioned you want creatives to have a bigger seat. Like, how can a marketer who's maybe a creative or a marketing leader and knows they need their company to invest in brand? And brand is so often one of these things that it's spoken of something that's difficult to measure or squishy or can't be quantified. In this macro market, how should marketers and creative leaders build the business case to have their company invest in brand?
I feel like in a lot of these conversations I have with marketers or even just business people, I'm like on an episode of Mythbusters where I'm trying to take everything that people think and like turn it around. I don't think that brand is too much of an investment. It's actually, I think, it's like one of these foundational things that helps you make more with less. I think the reason why people don't think that is that historically, if you remember like 5 to 8 years ago when performance was basically SEM and like there was just not an easy way to measure brand as quickly as you would with paid or any sort of digital advertising. So people were really apprehensive because it seems like something like, first of all, costs a lot. And then somehow there's this idea, oh, brand is a TVC and it's awareness and I'm not going to see results for a year and I need to show my manager the result tomorrow. That I think has changed dramatically in the last years, right? Like we don't operate like this anymore, especially B2B. It's not about that sort of like attribution by channel. And second of all, I do think that it's like basically thinking of anything, like even as a person, like the more you know about who you are, the better people are going to respond to you. The more authentic and original you are, the better actor you're going to be, a better artist. So I think brands really do need to know who they are because that really resonates. And I love hearing, when you read these articles nowadays, like creative is the new targeting. And I feel like we're vindicated because it's true. But nowadays it's true. And that's not because of creative in general, but because there is so much competition. The channels have changed. Everything has changed. Now you really need to be like interesting to stand out. If you don't have anything interesting to say, people won't care, no matter how good your targeting is. So in that sense, I feel branding is essential. But then on top of that, I feel like it actually is an efficiency tool. Like, for example, we invest a lot in creating design guidelines nowadays, especially in Figma, because that's been like the number one tool in the last years, where you think of this as a product design system. in the sense that it allows you to get your like standards really quickly to everyone across the company and across your customers and the click of a button. The same thing goes with brands. So the more you know of that like foundation, the easier it is to adapt it to everything else. And that's, I think, works really well with a lot of our customers and our own team as well. So yeah, I think that like the competition landscape has changed so much for everyone that you really need something extra to stand out.
Yeah, there's a few things I just absolutely love there. You mentioned like 5 to 8 years ago, marketing was SEM, PPC. And I think like the reason that worked 8 years ago is because not everybody was doing it. And then like everybody starts doing it, right? And it becomes less efficient. And now that kind of leads me to something I was thinking about is I feel like the brands that have invested in brand in the last 2 or 3 years, like those campaigns like really stand out to me. There's just not many of them happening. And it's like they've gone on offense while so many other marketers are now like playing defense, trying to figure out their PPC or their ad spend or their ROAS, like, because that's just the way they've always been done. And I feel like, again, the brands playing offense while others are playing defense right now really, really stands out. And I love you referencing it. Brand is actually efficiency. Like, and you mentioned the Figma use case. Like we do that. This is a bit close to home, a little bit of insider information for our listeners, but the Juice is going through a branding exercise right now. And a lot of it's being done in Figma. It is interesting to me. Like we've got our product design, we've got our brand design, like it's all right there. And because we're taking the time to get the brand right, then applying that to product is easier. Applying that to customers is easier. You're right. It's creating efficiencies for us because we're taking the time to do it right and invest in it. So, man, that's such an interesting perspective shift of like brand isn't inefficient. It actually creates efficiencies. I love that.
This is completely true. I think that if anybody here is listening and had to do any sort of ad for anything, right, even a small paid campaign, there is so many things you have to figure out that you don't need to because you're reinventing the wheel because you don't know what the wheel is. And that's your brand. Like if you would know these things, you would literally not have to do all of this work that people do still. Like I have a friend here who's worked at Google for like 12, 15 years. And I love this story. He always says, like, at the beginning, we literally had to phone people up, customers, and tell them, do you want to buy ads on Google? And they'll be like, but why? Like, what? And then it became like, okay, SEM, great, like links, great, super, super exciting. Then people started talking about like, oh, banners. This is it. Oh, there's these images that you click. And then there was like, oh, but YouTube is where we want to spend all of our budget. Hello. And then it just changes all the time. And I think if we don't catch up, we're going to be these people that are finding people to call them up about links.
Kind of related to that, you mentioned brand is foundational. Like no matter where the marketing spend goes or the marketing effort and energy goes, like having a solid brand is going to make it all that much better and that much stronger and that much efficient, which goes back to what you're saying about it actually creates efficiencies. Cool. I'm sorry. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. You had a LinkedIn post a little while ago that I read that was about remote work, and I really loved it. You mentioned you work remote, but you've made the effort, and Superside's made the effort and investment for you to meet so many of your coworkers still in person over the course of the last year, which I just think is awesome. But I'm going to like parallel that with our conversation we're having here a little bit. I'm curious, in this remote world, has that made creative work easier or more challenging?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think about this a lot. I think they're both challenges and obviously benefits, but I think overall, like the ROI is positive. I think that there are obvious challenges. Like, sure, I love being in a room with people and put Post-its up the wall and create something. I think there is a lot of really important things in that, like downtime and having drinks with people and getting to know them, obviously. But overall, I think that's another one of these things that's just not possible anymore, because if you want to have any sort of business, you'll probably have to work with people that are not in your city. And then I think there's so many benefits for like a business like ours, but I would say any business. First of all, you have a global talent pool, right? Like I think if you would have a football team and you were only able to hire, like to recruit from your one town, it would not be an amazing team. But if you can get people from everywhere in the world, that's where you get like a dream team. So that obviously makes complete sense. I also think this like flexibility of not having this 9 to 5 schedule is incredible. And I think the way, like the type of people that don't want to be stuck in a 9 to 5 job is the kind of people we want as well. And I do think like I'm a bit of I know a lot of people will be shocked, but I'm a bit of an introvert and I don't enjoy being in like an open office with 30 people all having calls and asking me stuff, right? So I didn't know if you remember, and I'm sure you do, like going around the building looking for like a booth to have a little call in, and then, you know, everybody's yelling and someone is having a pizza and you're like, please shut up. I'm having a call.
I can hear you chewing.
Yeah. It's like, why did we do this? Why did we like commute for hours? Why do we do all these things? I love the fact that when I'm here with you, I'm focused on this. And then afterwards, I'm going to do something else and I'm going to be focused on that. And that for me, at least, is much easier remotely. And I think also nowadays, like the tools we have are already so remote first that I'm like, even if we were in an office, we'll probably not be like looking at each other the whole day. We'll probably be stuck in tools areas. So I think it's awesome, but it's true that I love the fact that I have friends everywhere in the world, right? Like I travel a lot, and if I'm going to Barcelona, I'm going to know that I'm going to have like a beach picnic with my colleagues, and I'm going to go to Buenos Aires and to Cape Town, and you know, like I have someone to work with, and that's more exciting to me than the prospect of going to some sort of downtown office.
I think you're right. It's the flexibility to do both. Go somewhere and be in a room and use Post-it notes if you need to be, or be at home or be in a coffee shop and find that creative energy or that focused energy, whatever you need. I think that's really good. I love the like Post-it note exercise. I'm a big whiteboard person, so I'm in our office today and I always need a whiteboard. But, you know, I did pitch my wife on turning one of our walls in our office into like whiteboard paint where I could like write on it. She did not love that. So
is she in marketing?
No, she's not. So she doesn't quite get it or understand. I have a desk at home that's got a big whiteboard on it, but still doesn't quite get the job done when I need that creative outlet. Well, cool. Okay, we always wrap these conversations. What is one unpopular opinion that you have as it pertains to B2B marketing?
First of all, I think historically we think B2B has to be really serious. It's business to business, right? It has to be this like the same thing as the B2C, but like black or, you know, or really corporate. If anything, it's the opposite, because most of these people will actually know like what's under the hood. So they'll notice if you're doing something bad, especially us. Our targets are like the most creative and smartest people in the world. Like we need to get it right every time. And on top of that, like we're easily bored because we see so much. So I think first of all, our kind of mantra has been in the last months, we don't have enough budget to be boring. We're always like, if this is generic, cut it. We don't want to like spend the budget to do it. Another thing is like, oh, brand doesn't matter when it comes to B2B because it's all about the functional, the transactional. People just want to know what they're spending on. I think that's also not true because of the landscape. Nowadays, every big company now has a big competitor, right? There's no more monopoly on this. So I do think you could have love brands potentially in the B2B space. I do think people are excited to be behind other people, not just about functionalities. Yeah. So that's something we also love to work with in our own business, obviously in our brand, Superside brand. And also I've seen so many customers come to me with that kind of question. Like, hey, we've been doing this business for sometimes over 20 years. And now very small companies are stealing our piece of the pie because we kind of never thought about brand. And also I think, and this is something you can tell me more about if it's the same, but I think also channels nowadays don't really define our approach anymore. Like I feel like we've broken out of like the traditional B2B channel. So nowadays you can literally have a lot of success on TikTok. We have a lot of success with events. Other companies, I've heard really unexpected things from B2B brands where their biggest leads come from. And I think we need to be really open to that and like testing things out.
Like highlighting your people. Like we all buy from people regardless of whether or not it's a brand name or a person's name on the contract, right? And I think like with the rise of influencers and creators and just like more transparency, I think like more brands are now highlighting the people inside the brand in a more transparent way. And I'm a big fan of that. That's something we try to do at the Juice a lot. And I know Superside as well. So I think you're exactly right about that. And I totally agreed on the channel specific thing. More and more communities are a channel that I'm hearing working really well. Events, like always just like go where you know your people are. Yes, they're on YouTube. Yes, they're on Google, but so is everybody else. But there are these really like niche opportunities with communities, events, like roundtable type of events and professional groups that I think you just need to go. You need to go find your people and make sure your brand is there regardless of channel. So I really like that.
And I think you're making a point that basically it is all about people. I think especially the bigger the business is, the more you rely on people, the word of mouth, the experience you get. We have to work with people every day. And I think nowadays everybody just wants to know that they're investing their time in people they believe in. And that's why also we've had a lot of success with roundtables, field events. We love it. I mean, I was hosting a webinar in December where people are so excited in the audience that we decided to build a community on Slack, like in the call. And they're like, someone was already making it while we were speaking. So like, it just made me feel, first of all, very warm, but also like, yeah, the people really crave this more than anything.
Yeah, and maybe another like trickle down effect of the remote world that people are like, when they want it, people are craving that like community aspect even more in brands. So really cool stuff. Okay, if people want to learn more from you or learn more about Superside, what's the best way to do that?
I would say go on either superside.com. You can follow us on our socials, and also you can add me on LinkedIn and just DM me. And yeah, excited to talk to anyone. Feel free to do so.
Love it. Okay, thank you so much for joining the Content Cocktail Hour. To all of our watchers and listeners, thanks for joining another fresh episode. Until next time, cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining the Content Cocktail Hour powered by The Juice. If you want to see more episodes or more resources curated for your role, join us on app.thejuicehq.com. See you next time, same place. Cheers.